Lagueria Davis is my next guest. I hope I got that correct, Lagueria.
Yes, good job, Scott.
Thank you so very much. So there's a cinematic high budget movie called Barbie coming out, but at dead center, the movie that I'm anticipating, I want to get to see that a lot of people are going to see is Ligeria's movie called Black Barbie. And it is a true story about why Barbie only looked like Barbie that you're going to see in the movies for a very long time. And Lageria, thanks for being with us and tell us about the inspiration for your documentary. It's a fascinating story.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today, Scott, and for starting off with such a great question. And that leads me to my aunt, Beulah Mae Mitchell. When I moved to LA, I had the opportunity to stay with her while I got my bearings, and she got to telling me about how she worked at Mattel and she was on that first Barbie line, which I found fascinating. And then she mentioned asking a particular question, why not make a Barbie that looks like me? And that struck a chord with me. And I was just like, I'm a filmmaker, right? Um, I think there's a story here. So I went away and I did some research, and sure enough, a story is what I found. That first Barbie was released in 1959, and we didn't officially see the first Black Barbie until 1980. And as someone who didn't love dolls at the time, um, I found myself relating to a doll, Black Barbie, um, for the very first time, and was inspired to tell her story and my aunt's story, um, and was surprised that I didn't even think in terms of Black Barbie having a story. So that's why I think it's also just really important to, check out the film, support it, because I think if you don't know Barbie's story before this movie comes out, you're gonna know it now, and this gives you an opportunity to get a little insider information on um, Black Barbie's story because she does have one.
So your aunt worked at Mattel,
Hmm.
and which is going to become trillionaires because of this one that's coming. This big budget movie. Now, I
Yeah.
guess the natural question would be, why in the world would a toy company not take advantage of doing something with a doll that they could sell a jillion copies to little girls that wanted a doll that looked like them?
I feel like only they can truly, honestly answer that. I think in the film, which I hope you see coming up at Dead Center, we take a really fun approach to asking all of these simple questions. And we get to talk to the women who, it's a great intergenerational story. Um, Growing up in the time of Barbie and not necessarily having a Black Barbie to play with, and how that affected them. And then also, um, I would say that my aunt's question and some of her other, the Black women colleagues that worked with her who were like, "Yeah, why not? Let's make a Black Barbie. Why not make a Barbie that looks like me?" That call didn't go unanswered. There was, you know, uh, Black fashion dolls that were released by Mattel. Francie, Christy, Julia, you'll get to see all of these, you know, they're beautiful dolls. You'll get to see them, you'll get to hear people talking about them and how, for them, it was enough just to have these dolls that weren't particularly called Barbie. And so then, yeah, in 1980, we get to take a look at that trajectory, like what happened at Mattel to shift that conversation to um, deciding to incorporate in 1980 the first Black Barbie and that designer. So we get to sit down with Kitty Black Perkins, who designed the first Black Barbie, and her inspiration and how intentional she was, and the team that she brought together to, um, design Black Barbie. And I think that's one of the things that makes Black Barbie so special. And our film gets to, it really highlights how special she is in a way that so far no one really ever has, like we have in our documentary.
What are some of the cultural, sociological aspects of this that you may have discovered in the course of doing your documentary that maybe you weren't thinking about going in, or maybe you didn't think were going to come out? Is it were there surprises for you?
Yeah, there were surprises. As someone who didn't play with dolls and didn't like dolls particularly, um, I think as a generation who grew up, I didn't have as many black dolls growing up as this, generation has, but we definitely saw, pretty versions of black dolls. And it seems like, the discovery was the lack, and how that lack of affected um, my aunt's generations and the generations immediately following her, as they become doll collectors, and so, I think, one thing I say that in the sense of it took and how I related to Black Barbie is, it took 21 years for a piece of plastic, a doll, to be like worthy of a Barbie brand name. Um, and we know that this is, constructed through a different lens and a different person who's telling this narrative, a different narrative. And my question was in knowing, particularly what it's like to navigate this world as a Black, queer woman. And I'm not plastic. And the women in our film are not plastic. We're human beings, we're flesh and blood. Um, and, you know, we're important. We're here. We're not invisible. Um, and so this film really shines a light on that and celebrates that. It's about representation, self determination, um, intergenerational conversations on progress, and, just through the prism of Black dolls and Black Barbie. So, yeah.
Let me ask you about good and bad that you discover in something like this, if there was such
Hmm.
a thing. And then,
Hmm.
so it took Mattel 21 years, you said, 19 or 21 years to get a
21.
Black Barbie. Okay.
Yeah. Hmm.
But they did by 1980, which is a long, long time ago. And we're still seeing conversations about diversity and inclusion and marketing. Let me just see. Is there anybody I can think of right now, Budweiser? Okay, that are having interesting conversations about
Hmm.
how they represent themselves, people that they work with. Was Mattel, they look good in your documentary? And number two, are the things that you've learned, are there things that big companies that do things like make toys or sell beer or travel agents, whatever, are there lessons that you came away with from your experience of making this documentary that you think people ought to know, especially people? Let's just consider American capitalism right now. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Lessons that surprises you or that really messages that need to be shared.
Yeah, I think, what a question. I think, it's not a Mattel film, and it wasn't, a film that set out to say good, bad, ugly, pretty this. It is a film, by Black women for Black women about Black women celebrating um, Black women and this achievement. And yes, it shines a critical light on the performative nature of it, and the performative nature to be more clear of diversity and inclusion and where it comes from in the sense of serving some form of capitalist bottom line. And you know, this didn't make it into in the documentary, but there were conversations that were had about how much money is sometimes intentionally and unintentionally left on the table because of racism. And I think, this where we are right now is a very prime time to be having this conversation because from a marketing standpoint, Scott, it seems like a no-brainer for this movie. There's an audience for it. It's a great, fun, happy story that is like life. It takes you on an emotional journey. You laugh, you cry, you think, and hopefully you see the humanity and what it means to be able to see yourself represented and to have your community value what you bring and offer to the table, and not in a exploitive way, but in a real, genuine way. And it takes bravery. You talk about, we see what's happening with Target and Bush, and, it takes bravery. It takes, someone saying this behavior is not okay. People deserve to be able to live and love um, how they live and love if it's not hurting anyone. Um, and race, any of that shouldn't play any matter in that. The fact that we're all human. Um, it's a very nuanced conversation, and one film can't tackle it all. But we do ask a lot of questions. And hopefully people walk away, with, just thinking about those questions and, you know, finding areas in their life where they can move forward in a right, positive, non-performative direction when it comes to diversity and inclusion.
What do you want to do next?
Oh man. I would love to continue to be able to tell stories that really are fun and speak to something bigger, Um, and, hopefully this film will be an entryway into that, seeing the voice and the value that I can bring to the creative table. Uh, that would be the hope.
Do you know your screenings just yet that you can share with us about the time and date on most of those?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Opening night, Dead Center. Our film will be screening on Thursday, June 8th at 7 p.m. at the Oklahoma City Museum. Um, and then again on Saturday at 1:30 at Harkins. I'm super excited to be coming back to Oklahoma. I went to the University of Oklahoma. I learned how to make films in Oklahoma. This will be the third film that I've had screening at Dead Center, so it'll be a nice little reunion to see some Oklahomies and familiar faces.
So I did not know that you were a Sooner. So what I sort of need to ask, so when you came to Oklahoma the first time, where
Mhm.
was home before you came to Norman?
Fort Worth, Texas. So I'm from
Okay,
Fort Worth, Texas. Yeah.
very nice. Well, it's going to be great. It'd be great to meet you. I think we're going to be able to go to your screening on Thursday.
Yes.
And the museum, if you haven't been to the MOA um, museum, okay,
Of modern
to the
art.
museum, let's just get it this way. This happens when you would know this for many, many years, but that's what happens when age gets involved. But it's a great museum and a great place to see a movie. And I'm just thinking that, really intriguing personality. It's an intriguing topic at the right time. The second filmmaker I've talked to that I'm looking at the timing of their movies, the time they're coming out and they're being screened. I'm like, oh man, this is so timely right
Mhm.
now. And we see you mentioned the Target, you mentioned Bud Light and all those things. It's a conversation that oftentimes doesn't happen in the most enlightened way,
Mhm.
right?
That
Consider
part.
everything. And so this is really fascinating.
Yes, and, I look forward to meeting you in person, Scott.
Same here.
Definitely come say hello. Hope you enjoy the film. It'll be fun. We'll have a good time.
It sure will. I remember years ago at the University of Oklahoma, back then it was called the H. Hebert Journalism School before it became
Alright.
Gaylord.
Gaylor, yes. Mhm.
And a fellow by the name of Ned Hockman had told me, he says, Mitchell, he goes, there's always going to be actors and there's always going to be people do X, Y, and Z but topics and screenwriters, he goes, there's always going to be shortage of that. And he was trying to recruit me out of news into filmmaking. A-
Uh-huh.
And so this is what he was talking about. I mean, this is kind of Ned Hockman's legacy, and Lagueria Davis writing a documentary on a timely topic that's going to do great things, I'm sure, Lagueria.
From your lips to the universe.
Okay, so great. Black
Yes.
Barbie is the name of the documentary. Has your aunt seen it?
Yes, she came to the premiere at South by Southwest. We had such an amazing time, premiering the film there with her and being from Texas as well. So, yeah, she's seen it. She saw it before then, of course, too. You want to make sure everyone, feels good about it. So, yeah.
How long has it been since you've been to Oklahoma City?
Oh man, it's been many years actually. I'm thinking somewhere along I I was there maybe in 2016, 15, somewhere along in there. So
Okay,
yeah.
so you'll be surprised since you were at South by Southwest. Oklahoma City restaurant scene, it's the equal of Boston.
All right, I'm gonna
It's
get some
that
good
good.
food. I'm
Yeah,
excited.
it's that good. Lageria Davis, the movie is Black Barbie. Congratulations. Great topic and look forward to seeing you and best of luck.
Ah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll see you in a week or so.
Okay.
Alrighty.